It is 8:19. It's Wednesday morning, June 2nd. It's 2021. You know what year it is if you're listening to the radio. I say that for the purposes of our recording. We are recording this. We are keeping historic record of things here in the Valley. And it's my regrettable duty to inform you this morning that last night we lost the voice of the Valley, Chuck Carver, unexpectedly near his home in Lidditz, Pennsylvania. He had just retired. Depends on when you start counting. He moved from the Valley last April, just a little over a year ago, to be closer to his boys, his daughters-in-law, his grandsons, and to spend his time full-time with his wife, Michelle. And he didn't get as much time to do that as we had all hoped, and especially as much time as he had hoped. He came up with a succession plan for the radio station. That involved myself and my wife, and we were all too happy for the opportunity to grow and what turns out to be the opportunity to have worked with Chuck on a very important project. And we're thankful for that opportunity. And I've heard every day since everyone found out about us coming here that we have big shoes to fill. And now I think the shoes feel like they are about as big as shoes could ever be. 44 years in broadcasting, 44 years in the Valley, 44 years at the same two radio stations his entire career. There was a time when he also was part owner of WTTC in the Valley, in Towanda. And this is the place where he spent his entire career doing radio and news and sports and stuff. And one of his partners in that, since the very beginning, I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah.
That's right.
You've been partners with him since before you were even partners. That's a stupid thing to say, but
oh no, that's right.
Todd Bowers is back in the Choice Studio this morning. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, my old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
Well, we go way back till we were 12 years old. The way we met was he was on one little league team and I was on another little league team. We were playing for the championship. There was a game before our game, and I had never met him before. I just happened to see him. I knew he was on the other team, and we were going to play against each other. I said, my dad had asked me, can you go ask when the next game starts, meaning our game? So I saw Chuck. I didn't know him. I said, hey, do you know when this game starts? He goes, well, I'm pretty sure it starts after this one. So we just went from there. That was, we were 12 years old. That would have been 1965. And we really met in junior high. That we
got to know each other.
In junior high. We had gone to separate elementary schools, so had their own separate baseball teams. But then we met really when we were 12 years old in 7th grade. And there was another great friend of ours, Tom Heaton, who basically were thick as thieves right through high school and college and all of that. Chuck and I went to college together at The Ohio State University. Yes, we've had many conversations with many Penn State fans over the years, believe me. But, for Chuck, to me, was just my brother.
Yeah.
He and I were both very fortunate in our careers and with our family life and friends and all of that here in the Valley. We owe the Valley a lot. But, you hear about all the things he did, and it was fantastic and it was great. But to me, he was just my buddy. And we spent 90% of our time laughing, to be honest with you. If you know Chuck, that's the way he rolls. And we just had a fantastic time together. Somehow we figured out a way that became our career, right? It was like,
yeah.
People would say, you guys rehearse this stuff? What are you really? I said, it's just what we always do. We just flip the microphones on, and that's pretty much how it works. But
I tuned in. You guys did a reunion last year. It was COVID related. You brought in all the Bradford County commissioners, and the two of you basically, well, Chuck especially held court.
Yes.
Over the commissioners and
Yes.
the dignitaries, and you guys were mostly talking about the pandemic, but I was listening, which is weird when you're supposed to be doing a morning show on the competing station across town, and you're supposed to be doing your own show, not listening to the competition. And I listened to you guys, and I thought, wow, these guys are really good. And I remember one of the guests coming on, and the first thing they did was to give you guys a zinger. I don't even remember what it was. But I remember the two of you laughing, and one or the other of you said, "We'll do the jokes here." And it was just so perfect.
Right.
And it was delivered just so perfect. But it was really great listening to the two of you and that camaraderie between the two of you, that just the way you two interact, just to be able to hear your friendship spill out over onto the radio so the rest of us could enjoy that kind of a connection, even if we never even met one or the other of you.
Right.
And I think it's funny, the way you met Chuck sounds exactly the same way as how I met Chuck. He was playing on one little league team, and I was playing on the other little league team, and we were both vying for the championship.
Right.
And he said, "What time does the game start?" And that was basically how I met Chuck, except a year ago, not 57 years ago.
Right.
And I didn't get to know him nearly as long as you have, but I feel like I got to know him in the same way over a very short period of time, where competitors first, friends next, and he was just such a cool guy. Well, literally, we would some sort of wrinkle would come up in our business dealing of how is he gonna sell the radio station? How are we gonna buy it?
Right.
How is he gonna retire? And how are we gonna grow or expand? And some wrinkle would come up, and we'd just talk about it for like a minute, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good way to go." And then he or I would say, "Well, why didn't we start working together sooner?"
Right.
He was, maybe your experience is different, but I felt his experience, he was really easy to work with and get along with and just accomplish things with. Now, maybe I'm sure you too.
Chuck and I always said that we could sit down and reach a decision on almost anything in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
He had no patience for long, drawn-out meetings. They drove him crazy. They drove him crazy, right? No. And so that's just the way it was. We were always very honest with each other. I mean, we were essentially brothers. I have two other brothers, a great family. Chuck spent almost as much time in our home as we did. I mean, from the time he was 12 years old, and then especially when he got his driver's license, we lived about 3 miles apart. And this 64 blue Ford Falcon would come bombing in the driveway, and before it stopped, he was out the door. Yep, he's here. And then whether it was playing ping pong or pool or barn basketball or just hanging out, many, 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 many hours. In fact, when we graduated from college, my parents gave Chuck the same gift that they gave me. So that's how close we were. And it just, you talk about rapport and chemistry, and people say, how do you do it? Well, you're just a friend with somebody for 50 years, and hopefully you've developed a little bit of chemistry. So, but yeah, a wonderful guy. I used to call him the world's youngest curmudgeon because he had
radio will do that to you.
He had that persona a little bit. He was like, he could be opinionated and let's get going and come on. It was that sort of personality, and he'd see things he didn't like, and he would complain about things. And some people had the conception that that's the way he was. The people that really know him know that he would have done absolutely anything for anybody. Did a lot for this community. He also did a lot of things behind the scenes that people will never ever know. So he was just a great guy.
Tell us a bit about how some of these things started. Christmas is for Kids or Scholarship Challenge. I mean, they were a long time ago. Maybe before that, you should tell us about how you guys came to own Choice 102.
Well, out of college, we both graduated from Ohio State in 1976. There was a huge competition for broadcasting jobs back then. Watergate had happened. Everybody thought they were going to be Carl Bernstein, you know, and so he had lined a job up out here. The old owner told the joke that Chuck got the job because his wife's maiden name was Carver. So, yeah, I guess we'll hire that guy. I had a job lined up elsewhere, and Chuck called me one day and said, well, there's an opening here. And then I talked to the ownership, and they also decided to hire me. They said, well, Chuck seems to be working out okay, so maybe you will too. And the other part of that the pay was so terrible that we figured we could room together and save money on rent.
Perfect.
And, you know, and the idea is you're going to be in this small market for a couple of years, and then you know how it works. Being in you're going to move on and move on and move on, and eventually be in New York and be a star, right?
Sure.
Yeah, well, didn't happen that way.
And here we are.
And here we are. So we figured, well, we could either do that. I figured we could either do that, or you could get into ownership.
Hey, that's where the money is, they said, right?
Yes. So we worked. I worked here for 3 years. Chuck continued to work here all that time, and then we came back. I came back in 1985 and put together the deal to buy the radio station, and then sort of the rest is history. And what you guys are going through now, in terms of this better work. We were in the same boat back in 1986.
Buckle up, Buttercup.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how that happened. And in terms of Christmases for Kids, we had thought we should do something around Christmas time. We had literally owned the station for 3 months, I think. And I heard you talking earlier about dropping microphones out the window. This is when our studios were over on Desmond Street, and that's what we did for Christmas for Kids. We got this bright idea and decided to run with it. The first year, I think we may have had a couple pickup trucks of toys and maybe $1,000, something like that. But after a while, it reaches this sort of critical mass where it just takes on a life of its own. You know, people had that date penciled on their calendars. And different groups in the community, they just raised money, collected toys, and it did become that. You flip on the microphones and you know that the community is going to support you, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew and grew. And then the day of the broadcast, we flipped the mics on, and it became what it became, and we just waited and we took bets every year about at what point is Chuck going to cry, because he cried every single year, every single year.
Yep.
And when Jeff Barber, you know, Williams came towards the end of the broadcast, and then Jeff Barber's group from State Line always made a huge contribution. Guaranteed Chuck that was it. He was over the edge at that point. So that's how that started. And in terms of Scholarship Challenge, Chuck always loved game shows, Jeopardy, all of that. I think he's taken the Jeopardy test 37 or 38 times, but he would never
to be on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah.
How cool would that have been?
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's Chuck Carver on Jeopardy.
So he just decided,
I'll do my own.
that's it. I'll do my own.
Now, do you think if he ever got there, that where would he have stood? Would he have stood behind one of the 3 contestant podiums, or do you think he would have been standing over in Alex Trebek's spot?
I think he would have wanted to stand over, in Alex Trebek's spot, but he would have taken what he could get.
That's what he made us feel like when we stood up on the stage for Scholarship Challenge. All of a sudden, we just thought, oh my God, what we're about to do is incredibly important.
Yeah. And again, it became that too. I mean, the first year of that, I remember that it kept score on a chalkboard. It was down in the basement of the elementary school here. And it just grew. And again, it took on a life of its own. People knew it was happening, and they were looking forward to that. And I think for Chuck, he did like game shows, and he liked Jeopardy and all of that, but he also always loved kids. So he was able to put those things together. And, you're talking a little bit earlier about the number of questions and how many years he did it and people's lives that were affected. We would see judges and lawyers and people who had become very successful, and they would always mention the fact, remember, I was on Scholarship Challenge, so it had a big impact in the community.
Better than Jeopardy.
Better than Jeopardy.
Way better.
Yeah.
He made it look so easy. He just stood up there, and it was like, oh, now? Okay.
Yeah.
And like butter.
Yeah.
Like just... okay, right answer, wrong answer, let's go. His interaction with the kids was even better than the challenge itself.
Right.
Getting to just dig a little deeper with each kid and loosen them up and make them comfortable and then ask them some question that none of us would ever get right, and they nail it.
Yeah. And even during commercial breaks, he would go over and talk to the kids. I mean, he just always loved young people, always, and it did so much for them in this community over the years.
You guys worked together for like 30 years as owners together on the station. Plus, I mean, you got here right after him. I mean, so if he was here 44 years.
I was here from 76, left in 79, worked in other broadcasting venues for about 5 years, came back when we had the bright idea that we would buy a radio station, put that together. I was here for
the best and worst idea you're ever had simultaneously.
That's right. There were days it was like, what were we thinking? And then I had gone off and done some other things. And anyway, I retained my ownership since 1986. So whatever that was. And Chuck and I reached a deal in 2016 when I wanted to retire. So for me, it was 30 years owning the radio station. And I think I had some role here for, I don't even know, 38, 40 years, something like that. But yeah.
From the what were we thinking category, since we got here in November, there have been at least I'd say 5 times where I have said to myself or out loud to myself, boy, Chuck, you are so lucky right now. Whether I had a snow shovel in my hand or a gas can or a generator or standing on top of something that I shouldn't have been standing on top of or some weird thing that like Chuck doesn't have to worry about any of this anymore because he retired.
Yes.
What a lucky guy. And then to make it like worse, I would get back into the office, back to the, comfort zone, and I'd take a break and I'd open up Facebook. And if he was good at sending emails, his second best talent was posting on Facebook. And he would just post all the time, and he would post all of these things that he's up to, pictures of a beautiful sunset or Air Force One landing across the street from their place in Lidditz.
Right.
Or as recently as 2 days ago on Monday, posting the picture of him and the boys going to the National Aquarium in Baltimore.
Yes.
And every time, my gut reaction, every single time, and maybe it's because he and I were competitors for 15 years, I was like, geez, like instantly jealous of all the cool things that he's been getting to do in his retirement. And then my second thought is the voice in my head saying, this is going to be you someday, hopefully. So cool it, because Chuck's new job is creating a roadmap of all the cool stuff for you to do when you retire.
Yes.
So when I was going to see Chuck this weekend, I was going to say to him that I'm keeping notes on all of the cool things you're doing in retirement.
Right.
As things for me to do later on, hopefully, when I get there.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, if you're a broadcaster, particularly a local broadcaster, kind of the things you do to get on the air and broadcast what's important. I remember back in 1978, we were newbies, and I was doing the graveyard shift and he was doing the morning shift. That was the year we moved out here, and I think we had over 100 inches of snow that year. And I thought,
God.
what am I doing here?
Oh.
But anyway, I had signed off at 12:15. We were sharing an apartment. I made it about 12 feet in my car and had to walk home down to Athens. And I got home and I immediately woke Chuck up. It was about 2 a.m. by that point. He had to be to work at 4 a.m. I said, you better get up and start walking to work because there's no way you're going to drive there. So he literally got up, put on his mucklucks and walked all the way up to Sayre from Athens to get on the air on time to do the things you do when there's a snowstorm and you're a local radio station.
The things you do.
The things you do, and doing play-by-play broadcasts and trying to figure out how you're getting on the air, and, somebody's dangling from a ladder trying to get a connection, and it's just, you do what you got to do.
Banners falling down all around you while you're
yes.
trying to keep your headphones taped together.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, you're joining us in the middle of a story that we don't want to share with you. It's not we're sharing it with you, but it's not a story that we ever wanted to have to bring to you. And that is that our good friend Chuck Carver, the voice of the Valley, passed away last evening at his home in Lidditz, PA, or near his home in Lidditz, PA. And joining me in the studio this morning, I'm Dave, and joining me is Todd Bowers, longtime business partner and cohort of Chuck, and longtime friend since you guys were 12 years old.
12 years old.
That's hard to beat. I mean, you've known him longer than he's known Michelle.
Oh, yes. Yes, for sure.
How did they meet?
They actually met as a result of a broadcast.
Oh, well, go figure.
So
Isn't that how we met, Irene?
Yes, actually.
Life of a broadcaster, right? We do everything through the radio.
Radio gets results, right?
We were broadcasting a golf tournament of all things up at Nichols at Tioga. Mm-hmm. We were doing their club championship. Things we used to do, play-by-play golf. What could be better?
Yeah,
on the radio.
I love this.
And during that broadcast, I think one of Chuck's friends introduced them during the broadcast or immediately after the broadcast, and that's how they met, and it just went from there.
And Michelle's from Deposit?
Windsor.
Sorry.
Windsor. That's
yes.
Okay.
Windsor.
Yeah. And they, boy, what a team they have been.
No kidding.
I mean, the one thing he loved more than this community and this radio station was his family. I mean, it's the reason he's in Lidditz, right? He made his home in Lidditz.
If you can imagine him loving anything more than the Valley, it's his family.
His family, hands down. I mean, he and they adored him. I mean, it was wonderful. Chuck and Michelle had a great relationship. They bickered. You'd go over to watch Ohio State game, and it was the same way he and I were. He and Michelle were the same way. But there's bad marital bickering and there's good marital bickering where you understand what's happening there, right?
Right.
You understand the love that's underneath that.
That's right.
And that's what they lived. And his boys and his grandsons, he thought the world of them.
Absolutely. We're just bombarded with people today and comments and phone calls, and lucky to have awesome guests in the studio like yourself, Todd. And we can't thank you enough for being here. It's just when something like this happens, you just get this feeling inside of you that it's like, I should be there. Mm-hmm. Where, what should I do? I should be there. How do if they were still living here on Stedman Street, mm-hmm. there'd be people over at their house right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, they're 4 hours away, and it makes it hard for any of us to get there, especially in, post-pandemic or wherever we are today. I haven't checked yet what today's rules are.
Exactly.
Mike Shaw got in the car and drove down there last night.
That's Michael.
And that's him. He's already on the way. He's the one who called you last night. Is that right?
Yes. We were just coming back. We usually go to Memorial Day to see my family. My mother's almost 95 years old. And, we were just getting back to the Valley when we got the call. And like I've heard from a lot of people, it's like, how can that be true? It just, you can't process it, and you think, is this really happening? My first thought this morning when I woke up, how you wake up and there's something weighing over me. It's that.
Right.
It's that. Right, yeah. And then you just try to, part of you tries to talk yourself out of the fact that it really happened. And that's where we all are right now. And it's just difficult.
Yeah, because we're literally, like Jim Lister said a half an hour ago, I mean, we're talking about Chuck, and we're just sort of waiting for him to walk through the door.
Yeah, I talked to him last week. I texted with him on Monday, Memorial Day. We were planning a trip down there next week to go play golf and go to a baseball game and all of that, like we've done many, many, many times before. And, we're all looking forward to it. And then you get that call, and it's just like the world changed like that.
Yeah. I had texted with him Friday night, and he texted us. And then yesterday he was sending emails. He was emailing Sherry.
Yep.
And I didn't get any emails. I didn't get any emails. And we get the news after 7:00 last night. And from that moment forward, we're just on the phone constantly and circling the wagons and figuring out what to do and who and how to respond and making sure the people that really need to know. And once we've gone through our list of notifications that we have had to make last night, I sat down and started doing some computer things to get ready for this morning. And I opened my email, and sitting right there at the top of the inbox, I had this special setting for Chuck because in the beginning...
So did I. Special setting for Chuck.
In the beginning, I didn't get his notes. They were going to the wrong email address or something like that. And once we got that sorted out, I made it so that all of his messages that came into my inbox get set to high priority and are pinned to the top so that I don't miss something. And sitting there, high priority, pinned to the top, last night at 11:30, is an email from Chuck Carver about Sunday, because this Sunday we had plans to get together.
Right.
And I sat there and I thought, how the hell did he just send me that? And my eyes kept traveling over, and it saw 9:15 a.m. or something like that. He was involved in this radio station, in this community, right up through and beyond his last day.
He didn't make. It's almost as if. Well, I know he didn't. He didn't make a distinction between the radio station and the community. To us, it was the same thing, And we figured we did a lot of joking and a lot of laughing, and like I said, 90% of the time with Chuck, it was laughing and having a good time. But the stuff he was very serious about was serving the community through this radio station and the other things he did, but primarily through this radio station. He took it very, very seriously. He was a great newsman.
He was
people don't
best.
Yeah.
You're right. Again, like things like Scholarship Challenge, if you live in the Valley, grew up in the Valley, you might take for granted, the radio station does scholarship. That is so unique and completely unheard of.
Right.
As was his ability to cover the news. I mean, you practically can't see out the front window of this radio station because of that row of trophies, hardware, whatever you want to call. I mean, he was all about the hardware. He loved the hardware. I mean, he got an award he knew where they all were too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we couldn't find one in Owego to save our lives.
Right.
They're all right here.
Ta-da! Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and like I said, these are just the ones that he left behind. I mean, I said to Sherry, like on, I don't know, Thursday of our first week, I said, we've been here 4 days and haven't won an award yet. We're falling behind.
Yeah, that's right. Get back on pace.
I'm feeling like a loser here. Like, I got to get this show on the road. But that is a testament in his profession and in his industry to how good a newsman he was. You don't go to other radio stations and see this many awards literally piled up.
Right.
The guy knew what he was doing.
He knew what he was doing. He and I had a lot of conversations. I graduated with the same degree, broadcast journalism, and Chuck and I always had a relationship where even if I wasn't working at the station, I was off doing my other things at the time, he would call me and say, I got this, what should I do? It'd be a 30-second conversation. Yep, got it. Okay. And that's the way it worked with us.
On to the next.
On to the next.
Yeah.
And just great writer, delivered the news wonderfully, and just had his finger on the pulse, because he was here for so long. It's how rare is it to have one person on a radio, involved in
everything
ownership.
traveled through him in this valley.
Yeah, yeah.
You couldn't go from one end of town to the other without him seeing you come over the hill and say, "What are you doing going over there?"
Right.
Or whatever.
Right. And he was able to distill that down every day into 3.5 minutes. Just boom, boom, boom. Yeah, unbelievable.
So there's this thing called the Citizen of the Year Award.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the origination of that?
I think that was another Chuck idea, and it originated before we had actually taken over the radio station, and just continued it. We figured, there are a lot of people doing great work in the community, some well-known, some behind the scenes, and we think it's important to salute those people. And so that's really how it started. And every year, come November, we'd go over a list of people and decide who it was going to be. And it's been everybody from the CEO of Guthrie to people that, were just sort of out there doing their thing behind the scenes. And we found out and said, you're the Citizen of the Year. But that's really how that worked. And I thought it was so cool for you guys to name him the Citizen of the Year at the last Scholarship Challenge. Chuck was an emotional guy. A lot of people thought he'd come across as this, I don't even really know how to describe it, but he
was sort of a little bit of an iron curtain, I think, at first.
Little bit, yeah.
But then it was just this...
And a lot of time, he'd give you a zinger to, like you say, well, who's this guy,
Right.
Once you got to know him, then you understood, right?
Exactly.
This is just what we do. But very emotional guy.
Very emotional guy. And really genuine and heartfelt. I mean... I remember the first time we met, there goes the choice bus driving past the studio right now. Todd and Chuck on the side of it.
We never go away.
It was a tribute.
We can't change it now, guys. The first time Irene and I came and met with him about selling the radio station, we sat back in his office and closed the door, and we talked, and we looked around a little bit afterwards. He showed us around a bit, and when the meeting was over, he said, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, more or less, have a nice life.
Yeah, let's have a nice life.
It was sweeter sounding than that when he said it. But I just my eyes shifted around the room, and we got outside, and I said to Irene, what just happened? He's not going to sell us the radio station, is he? Because he just said, good luck.
Have a nice life.
Good luck. He said, it was something like, good luck to you both.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what did I say wrong? Mm-hmm. But it was that sort of emotional side of him. He knew. Mm-hmm. You never know what's around the corner.
Right.
And God, I wonder what went through his head last night, because how surprised were we and how surprised was he? I mean, this is just completely suddenly. Mm-hmm. But he always, in my dealings with him, I don't know if he was like this his whole life or just when that essence of retirement was in the air and he started to stop and smell the roses. He always took the time to tell you how much he appreciated you and valued his relationship with you and to compliment you on just who you are. And I thought in the beginning, boy, this guy just really wants me to buy the radio station. But I believe that that's really him. And
right.
That's the way that he interacted with everyone. And
I think, when he and I had a conversation probably 6 months ago, talking about just how blessed he felt. Mm-hmm. What a great life he had had.
Every day.
And both of us were talking. You talk about two blessed guys. It was us.
Yeah.
It was us.
So the Citizen of the Year Award, I mean, you talk about having 15-minute meetings. I don't think that we met for 15 seconds.
Nope.
And to try and pull one over on Chuck was about one of the hardest things you could do.
Yep.
And the decision was immediate that Chuck was going to be our citizen, our first Citizen of the Year. Mm-hmm. But now, because he is so task-oriented, we have to find a way to get him to forget about the Citizen of the Year.
Which was so tough.
Yes.
Because we were essentially blowing him off. He'd call or he'd email. He'd be like, so have you guys had a meeting about, yep, we're on it. We got it taken care of. We're good. And
and I kept waiting for him to say, well, who's it going to be?
Exactly. He never did. He never asked, who's it going to be? Who'd you pick? Who?
And I said, he's got to know.
Yeah.
He's got to know that it's him.
I truly don't think he did.
And I don't think he did either.
No.
But the deal was you guys would meet in November. The award would go out in December. And we had just gotten here in November. And we don't even know we didn't even know what to do yet.
Right.
But we knew that Scholarship Challenge was coming. And literally, Chuck worked with us through the end of Scholarship Challenge. He still worked here, in essence, November, December, January, February, and March. And it wasn't until then that things cooled down. But getting him to come up here after he had retired was a little bit of a task.
Yes.
And so we knew we had to do it when he was going to be here. And we knew that Scholarship Challenge was the thing big enough to get him here. And he was going to be here for the last one. He wanted to do the finals. And then at the last minute, it changed to he's going to be here for the first one to teach us how to do it. And then we would be on our own for the rest. So
that in itself is quintessential Chuck. What's the big deal? Here's the book. Here's the book. You just do it, right?
It's easy.
Well, I don't have 41 years experience, but yeah, I guess.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
So
I was always the backup for that show. He goes, "You're the backup announcer if anything happens to me." I'm like, okay. I hope I don't have to take on that role. So you know what it's like.
To come back?
No. I'm retired, remember?
Well, that means you're coming back.
So we get the plaque done. We get his name added, and it's a plaque that hangs on the wall in the hallway of the radio station. And there's, I don't know how many years it's been happening, but I'd have to look at the plaque to know. But there's at least 30 names on this plaque.
Right.
And so we got to get a little plaque with a little nameplate made up to add to this plaque. And then we have to hide it from him.
Right.
And he was coming in a couple of days ahead of time, and his first stop, where do you think? After getting hot dogs over at Ted Clark's, was right here at the radio station.
Yes.
And we had the plaque done and ready, and we had to take it off the wall. And he had to not notice that the Citizen of the Year plaque was missing from the wall in the radio station. And if you know Chuck, he could tell you if we said, Matt, hide one of the awards in this room. Chuck could tell you off the top of his head which award is missing right now.
Oh, yes.
A 1987 Christmas is for Kids award. So I don't know how, but he never noticed that it wasn't there. Or if he noticed that it wasn't there, he was kind enough not to say anything. And then when we got it over to the Sayre Theater, we had to hide it so that he wouldn't notice a glorious award, right? And so we were successful in all of that. And I have the audio, and it's going to make you cry. And we are going to play it again in just a little bit. But we surprise him with the Citizen of the Year award, and he breaks down into tears. So we break down into tears, and it's a big old sloppy mess up on the stage. And we get through it, and it's a wonderful time. A month or two go by, and Chuck emails Sherry to remind Sherry that the Citizen of the Year also gets their own plaque.
Which we had forgotten about.
Whoopsie daisy.
And I was thinking, I was like, boy, you're the Citizen of the Year, but you don't get anything? That doesn't make sense. We should make they should get an award or something. And I talked to Sherry. She's like, oh, you're right. We do that. Like you guys obviously you guys had already thought about that. And so yet again, I'm not bringing anything new to the table, but, trying to fill his shoes.
Right.
And so Sherry, reaches out, gets the plaque made. It comes out beautiful. And we know he's coming up here for the weekend of June 5th and 6th. So it's like, well, let's not worry about it getting lost or damaged in the mail. We're just going to hold on to it a little bit extra longer and give it to him when we see him. This was maybe a month ago. And a week goes by and he calls or emails and he says, well, I still haven't gotten my award yet. And if you know Chuck, look, here goes the Todd and Chuck bus again. They're just circling the block at this point now.
That's right. Just to rub it in.
Chuck is driving the bus from above. So he calls to remind Sherry that he hasn't received his plaque yet. And we just look at each other like, come on already. And so we went to a conference last week, and I don't know what it was, but the day before we left, Wednesday, we were getting all of our ducks in a row, getting everything in order to jet away from the radio station for a week. We want to make sure everything went well while we were gone. And something told me, it just said, send him the plaque. And so I called Sherry. I was on my way to the tower site to fix something dumb as usual, right? And I called Sherry and I said, you know what? Before we go to the post office and drop that plaque in the mail to Chuck, please. Just so we don't have anything hanging over our heads while we're gone. And that was Wednesday, and we traveled Thursday, and we all sat down to dinner Friday night. And where's my phone? I got this text message from Chuck while we were sitting at dinner. He said, you guys are too much. The most beautiful plaque ever arrived today. More tears, of course, and continued appreciation. And I am so freaking glad that we sent him that plaque.
Yeah.
I don't know why we
That wild.
And when I stop and I think back about this whole process, and I can talk to you about this, Todd, because how hard is it to sell a business, to sell a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, federally regulated FCC license? It takes years. And how long does it take to buy one?
Right.
And set it up and get the deal right and get the money sorted out. I mean, Chuck and I worked together on this for almost an entire year before we could even tell anybody that we were working on it.
Right.
And for that to line up and for him to be able to take that sigh of relief, for us to be able to grow, and for this radio station to have a succession plan in the Valley, for all of that to be perfectly lined up, and happen over the timeline that it did is an absolute miracle.
Yeah.
And if Chuck were here, he would tell you that neither he nor I had anything to do with it, because neither of us, quite frankly, are that smart to be able to pull that off the way that we did.
Right.
And I don't want to get too far out there on you, but man, God had some sort of a plan.
Right.
I don't know what his plan was in taking Chuck from us last night, but to make it so that he could retire, the radio station would have a succession plan. Michelle wouldn't have to worry about any of this, and for everything to fall into place so perfectly, for us to be able to have him with us, or for us to be able to be with him through one more scholarship challenge, so we could see it, feel it, experience it ourselves, for him to be able to do it one more time in front of, because last year's scholarship challenge got canceled the night before finals, and he didn't get to finish the scholarship challenge the way he wanted to.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
And he was able to come back one more day and do probably the thing he loved most on the radio, and that is host another day of scholarship challenge.
That's right.
And for him to have that opportunity, and for us to move it to the glorious Sayer Theater, I mean, just the stately, scenic,
great venue.
It was like graduating. Mm-hmm. It was like Chuck had graduated. It was like the event had graduated, and all was right with the world. And I remember they got there early Friday. We spent the day together, prepping, waiting, sitting in the seats, waiting for something to happen, watching the engineers set up because we didn't know what to do. Just talking and hanging out. Me there, Irene there, Michelle there, our daughter Emily there, sitting on Michelle's lap, getting baby snuggles, and Chuck and I just telling stories, and me hearing about his career, and just spending that last bit of time together that he and I would have to pass that torch on, to learn about everything, and to, I guess, arm us with what we need to know to be able to go forward. I've always felt like we'd be able to ask him 1,000 more questions anytime we need to, and I guess timing being what it is, he felt like we're ready.
Yeah.
And for this to not happen while we were away in Oklahoma on a radio conference, it's almost like, to me, he waited.
Mm-hmm. I know. Chuck and I had conversations through the process of the sale, and afterwards. And when I retired, he said, I just don't know how I can do that. What would I do if I didn't do this? Meaning his radio station work. And I said, the way I look at it, I had a great run, and I just kind of knew it was time. And I love retirement, and I hope the same thing for you. And I know we had a conversation probably 3 months ago, the same conversation we were talking about our lives and how blessed we were. And he just says, I'm totally at peace with this. We did the right thing. We sold it to the right people. I had a great run. I enjoyed it. And now I get to be with my family. And he was totally at peace with the way everything worked out, and he was excited for you guys too.
Yeah, he said that to me too multiple times, that he knew that the station and me were in the right hands with Dave and Irene. So yeah.
Chuck told me, Sherry, he said, when I'm talking to the Radigans, I say, there's one person that's indispensable. Her name is Sherry. Keep her.
You want to know what he said to us, Sherry? He warned us. He said, so here's the deal. Sherry will do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. She'll yes you to death, even if she doesn't really want to. But the secret is, and she doesn't know that I know this, but when you give her a task and the words, you betcha, come out of her mouth, she doesn't really want to do it. But she'll do it anyway.
He's not wrong.
I think the things that you guys just said are the same and reciprocal. And I think that he knew he was putting us in good hands in the valley and in this building and with Sherry. And it was a two-way street because he, as you would expect a lot of times with people selling something, that they just want to sell something. But it wasn't that way with him. He wanted to sell it and he wanted someone to buy it. Like, he wanted them to be fully involved in it. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't going to step away from it any other way.
Right. He wanted someone to love it as much as he did or does. Yeah.
He wanted to make sure that it was as much a good fit for us as we were for it.
Yep.
And when it came right down to it, towards the end of our deal last year, I told you the thing about setting the importance of an email, and here he is still at the top of my inbox. There's this one email I still have pinned from October 15th, 2020. And the subject is "Hey."
In
I
all
got about
lowercase letters
7,000 of those,
or
yes.
uppercase letters.
All lowercase. And no emojis, because I heard that he hates those.
Hates them. Especially multiple.
It's so personal, and I don't think that we've ever really shared this on the air. We haven't even had time to get personal yet on the air yet. But we had been talking all last year, and Irene was pregnant, pre-COVID baby, by the way. For those that are and our daughter Emily, who's 8 months old now, was born October 5th. She was born at Wilson Hospital because they have a NICU there, and she was being born a month early, 5 weeks early. Mama's blood pressure was high, and we needed to make sure that Mama was going to be okay. And Emily was far enough along that we knew that she'd be fine. And so she was born at Wilson Hospital, and we were there for a few days, and they released us. And it wasn't until we were in the Guthrie parking lot at Robert Packer Hospital 5 days later or 6 days later.
8 days later.
8 days after she was born. 5 days after she was released from the hospital that we found out that we were just released too soon, and that Emily needed to be in more constant care. And the excellent physicians at Robert Packer Hospital gave us this advice and said she needs to be cared for, and we can't do it here. She needs to go to Golisano and be cared for there, where they have a proper NICU and all of that. And she needs to go by ambulance ride up there. And I did the fatherly reaction of, "You're freaking kidding me. No way." Mm-hmm. And they said, "Yes way." And so this was 2 hours after we had talked to Chuck in the morning. We were really in the home stretch of sorting things out, and everything was going fine. We went to a pediatrician's visit, Guthrie Pediatrics over here with Nikki Whitman, and our daughter Emily went unresponsive. She sent us over for blood work at the hospital. We went in, did the blood work, came out. And Emily went unresponsive in Irene's arms. And I drove her from the parking lot right to the front door of the ER. And they went out, walked right in. During COVID times where everyone has to wear a mask and take a temperature, right in, through the doors, do not pass go, you're in. And I parked the car, and by the time I got back up to the ER, they let me right in. We were in the first room in the first trauma bay with an 8-day-old, and they had woken her and made her become responsive. And by the end of the day, we were at Golisano Children's Hospital in Rochester, where we have family and where they are also incredible, with Emily, who had been stabilized and was getting the exact care that she needed. The very next day, 24 hours after Chuck and I and Irene had a phone call about how to really get this deal finished. Chuck sends me this email. Subject, hey. Actually, I didn't get it at first. He texted me. He said, check your email. And I checked my email and I said, I don't have anything. Because once again, Chuck sent this email to himself instead of sending it to me.
Not surprising.
Not at all.
He takes this email that he sent to himself and then forwarded it to me. And I don't know where it is now. It says, here it is. It says, Dave and Irene, all caps. Let's do this. We've thought about it, discussed it, and prayed about it all day. I appreciate all the work and effort you have put into this, as well as your vision for Watts Waiver. I wasn't going to read this next line, but I'll read it anyway. I respect my advisors, but they don't know you, and they're looking at formulas, period. Not people, not heart. And to his advisors who are listening right now, they're shaking their heads.
Yep.
He said, I trust the two of you. I respect you and what you have built. This just feels right. And then it gets into, if your attorney can revise the agreement to reflect what you have outlined and your money dudes can get us some numbers, I think we can quickly get this thing over the goal line. Sleep well. Thanks again. Call anytime. Here's to a happy future, my friends. CCC. May grace and blessings be in your path. Chuck Carver, owner, Choice 102 Watts Waiver. Mm-hmm. The day after our daughter went into the NICU, and Chuck has no idea now because we have not had time to tell anyone. And so now we're sitting there like, baby in one hand, radio stations in the other. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. What are we supposed to do now? And everything went smoothly from there forward as it had even prior to that. But the idea was that we would make it effective November 1st. But now we're in a hospital, in strong hospital in Rochester, and we don't know what our future is. Mm-hmm. And so Chuck quickly changed his tune to say, whenever Emily is healthy and safe and ready to come home and you guys are ready to go to work, that's when we'll do it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about him or what his timeline was or when he needed to be or what he needed or how much or any of that. We knew what we were going to do. It was just a matter of when we were going to do it. And he just let go and said, if there's anything I can do to help. And we exchanged 7,000 more emails from a laptop in the NICU.
You sent Emily a present?
And Chuck and Michelle, when we got back, there was a package waiting for us at WEBO. With a
I didn't.
Sherry didn't send it, but it did have a Choice 102 return address sticker on it that he had obviously pilfered from the radio station to bring with him to Lidditz, and they sent us a nice outfit or something like that for Emily, and it's just, I mean, pretty much from that moment, the Carvers and the Radigans have been one family.
Yeah.
And they have been like family to us. And Chuck had taken to calling me brother and radio brother. And I honestly felt that.
Right.
And I still feel that.
I think Chuck had he like we said before, he could make decisions like, okay, I know what I got to do. Boom, that's the decision. But he also had this great sense, I think, of empathy, where he, in that situation, it immediately went from let's do this to what do you need, how you guys doing? It's that kind of thing. He had that ability to sit down and connect, to go, oh, okay, hold it. We need to find out how you're feeling here. And he was really good at that.
He was. I mean, in the news business, you always talk about striking when the iron is hot. Right place, right time, right topic, right just. And man, did he have the pinpoint perfect radar for that. every single, well, maybe not every single time, but probably more times than not. If you're just joining us here on Choice 102 this morning, I am Dave Radigan, joined in the studio by my wife, Irene Radigan, and we are the new owners of Choice 102, and we're joined by Todd Bowers, who's a former partner in Choice 102, was a partner a long time with Chuck Carver, a longtime friend. They've known each other since they were 12 years old, for 57 years. That's what you told me on the phone last
57
night.
years, yes.
So does that make, are you both the same age?
Yes.
So that makes you and he 69?
Oh, no, that's right. It wasn't 55 years. I'm sorry.
67.
67. Chuck would have been 67 June 16th.
Coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a long time.
Goes back-
Whether it's 55 or 57, it's a long time.
That helps us connect the dots back to the birthday present
Yes.
that we have waiting for him here that Michelle had sent to the radio station
Yes.
so that he wouldn't find it in Lidditz, I guess.
Michelle sent me a sweet message and said she was listening a little bit. And she said, keep that present under your desk a little longer. And we will.
We will.
As long as it needs to stay there, it will.
Yeah.